Have you ever felt like you've outgrown your life, but your life hasn't outgrown you? Or every time you go back somewhere, you somehow become an older version of yourself again? Maybe there are places where you feel completely like yourself, and others where it's almost like that version of you disappears. Or maybe you've wondered why it's so hard to become someone new, even when you know exactly who you want to be. Because maybe changing isn't just about changing yourself. Maybe it's about understanding why some parts of you seem to come alive in certain places and disappear in others. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Welcome to the Yalara podcast. I'm Naomi Gershlik and I'll be your host for today's episode. At Yalara, we're exploring what it means to redefine modern female identity on our own terms. To move beyond inherited expectations, external definitions of success, and the paths we've been told we're supposed to follow. Through conversations about identity, alignment, self-trust, personal growth, and building a life that genuinely feels like your own, we're creating a space for women who know there has to be another way forward. Not just individually, but together. Have you ever noticed how some people just don't change after school? The same social group, the same friends, the same way of socializing, and they're not wrong for that. They're absolutely not wrong for that. That's the life that works for them, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why people don't change after school. Because the people that don't change are the kids that everyone wanted to say they knew or use as a reference point. Because in school, they were rewarded for it. What they were doing in school worked for them. They stayed that way. Of course you would. You would stay exactly what you're being rewarded for, so they don't change. Some of us may have been these kids, and are these kids still, and some of us weren't that. Some of us were quieter, some of us were somewhere in the middle. And this social hierarchy that happens at school really solidifies what the rest of your life can look like. I think that's so fascinating to why that happens. Think about it. If you're being rewarded for how you're being, if everyone wants to be you, it feeds your ego. It solidifies it. It makes you think, yeah, I'm doing it right. I've got to keep doing it like this. Because you've had that positive feedback loop, you keep doing that. You keep chasing the same validation, the same response from other people. And what's interesting is that the reason why these people don't often change later in life isn't because they're still being rewarded for that same social pattern. Actually, they're the ones that end up often with the same friends but fewer friends. And that's not because they're not popular or they shouldn't be, but it's because as you get older, it's more difficult to experiment with your identity and to make the change. You're not in as many situations where you're in different social circles and you get to figure out who you're becoming. It's solidified through school, through university, or the next phases of early adulthood. If you're not rewarded for who you are in school, as soon as you get out of that environment, you switch it up so quickly. Any new experience or new environment that you enter into, there's this social storming where everyone's trying to prove themselves or be something that maybe they slightly are, but definitely are not. That's not who they are 100% of the time. That's not who they are at their core. But what that is trying to get your social footing, your social standing, trying to imitate the rewards that the popular kids were getting in school. We're trying to seek that out and figure out how we do that in a different setting later in life. Often we think that if we're not getting rewarded socially, that we need a new environment to reinvent ourselves. Actually, we don't need a new environment to reinvent ourselves, but we do need a new environment. Because the one that we're in is not the right environment for who we are, of where we thrive. So we need to look at it differently. Instead of the reward being something meaning that you must stay that way, it should actually mean that that's the best environment for you. And it's kind of sad if you think about it, that for some people, the environment they thrived in the best at was school, and that was it. So they're going to try to recreate that environment. That's natural. That's not the wrong thing to do. That's psychological. You're seeking acceptance and you're seeking a home in people, in a place. Your environment is really shaping who you're choosing to continue to be, which parts of yourself you take forward and which parts you leave behind. And that's a constant process throughout life. We're always thrown into different environments, into changing places. But that's not the true version of ourselves. Actually, You might not be the problem. How you've been may not be the problem. It just maybe need to find the right one. Have any of you moved back in with your parents after a time where you've been away from them? Whether that's university, whether you moved away for a while, you went traveling, you came back, or you had a different life path that meant that you came back to your parents. Any of you that have felt that as an adult, when you come back to where you were nurtured and where you were brought up, your hometown, you often find yourself slipping into behaviours and into ways that you're not 100% comfortable with. And we kind of give ourselves a hard time about it, myself included. I moved back home after university and I really struggled to readjust. To be honest, I never really did readjust. I had to find a new way forward in that environment, but the reason why it was so difficult was because the last time I was living there was when I was 18 years old and a child. The last time I was properly living there, I was a child. That was 10 versions ago. I've evolved so many times since, and the way that I choose to live has become who I'm becoming as an adult rather than who I was as a child. I don't remember what it feels to live like that person because I'm a completely different person now. I'm a lot more independent. I have my own place in the world as an adult. So fitting back into that environment is really difficult because all the habits that I built up. At the end of university, I was someone that woke up at 5 a.m, that went to the gym before the sun had come up and went to sleep at 9 p.m. Such a good routine, and I felt amazing. I was so productive. I had all these great habits and routines. I'd become an adult. I was functioning as an adult that could take care of herself. I mean, that wasn't the first version after I went to university, but I'd evolved so many times. I'd had so many experiences. It'd been 3 whole years. And that's not 3 years when you're an adult later in life. That's 3 very formative years of the start of your adult life. You change so many times before your brain fully develops. And you keep changing after that. We're always changing. But even just the first few, we go through so many versions. Every time we look back to a year ago, when we're younger, we think, oh my gosh, I don't even recognize that person. Imagine 3 years of that. And then now I'm back in the environment where I'm not so independent. I'm living in a unit of people again. I'm in the exact place where I was last nurtured as a child, where I was going through different things that I was navigating at the time. Emotionally, I was put back into that place. I didn't understand why my mood had dropped. And it was just because the environment I was in held this presence, held this energy. Places hold energy. People hold energy, but places as well. When we're in places that make us feel a certain way, sometimes it's not ourselves. That's the problem. We blame ourselves. We feel really guilty that we're not functioning optimally, that we're not functioning how we usually would, that we don't like the way we're acting in certain situations, and we feel a little bit off in how we're coming across, and we feel guilty about that. We don't really like that version of ourselves. It's not necessarily always because we're a bad person. We can be wrong, but it's not because we're doing it on purpose. It's because we're slipping back into the energy that is being asked of us when we're there. For some people, that energy is the right energy and it resonates with the best version of themselves, and so they're able to carry themselves in exactly the way that they would want. But most of the time, that's not the case. Especially if we've evolved into a new person. That person didn't exist here before. I was having to figure out how to be the evolved version of myself back in a place that didn't know that version at all, that didn't hold the same energy of the place that I evolved into the person I was. After a few months, I felt so drained and burnt out and a little bit lost. The path forward became really difficult because I was having to keep going with life while re-navigating how I could try and get back to where I was, when actually I realized that that wasn't possible. Instead of becoming and trying to seek and fight for the version that I loved and the version I had become, I realized the only way that I could be that was to change my environment, but that wasn't possible for me. So I realized I had to stop fighting to become that person and go through the journey again, put the energy in, do the work again. All this work that I'd done on myself, it kind of felt like it had been for nothing because now I had to do it again. And I had to figure it out for the old environment. It was like everything I'd worked on myself to get towards, the person I'd become, all that energy, all that journaling, all that meditating, all that learning, it just felt very demoralizing because I realized I would have to do it all over again. When I realized that, I decided, okay, if I'm going to have to do this, then I need to stop fighting it. I need to just embrace it. The thing is, no matter how long went past, I never found that rhythm that worked for me as well. It was really tricky. And I think this is a very common experience. It's all because you're having to fight to get to some level of normalcy. That's exhausting, and that is putting you in survival mode. So feeling less productive is just natural. We can choose to fight it, but it's going to put a strain on us. I burnt myself out doing that, but I had to do it to learn the lesson and realize what was going on. Every day became about survival again, and only from there, when I learned to survive and found my rhythm and just keeping myself going, could I actually do anything. And that was really difficult to contend with, which definitely hindered my progress a lot. I was beating myself up and saying I'm being lazy, and I'm someone that really, lazy is not a word I would use to describe myself. I have always taken way too much on my plate, and I always like doing so much. I'm always someone that's really busy, and this was a time where I wasn't busy and I had time and I wasn't getting nearly as much done as I wanted to. I definitely felt stagnant and stuck, and like I couldn't figure out a way forward. I was still trying to figure out a way to keep going, to do the basics. And at some point in our lives or another, we've all been there. There's absolutely no shame in that. It's not necessarily that you're lazy. It's just that the environment that you're in, it's not rewarding you. It's not encouraging you. It's not making it easy to do those things. It's not natural. It's not easy to find a rhythm. I'm not going to say that for everyone it isn't laziness, because for some people it can be laziness, and therefore it becomes a rhythm and a pattern, and it actually comes down to making a decision to make a change, doing the small things, celebrating the small things, getting better at the small things, and then increasing other things as they go along. But that's what I had to do too. I had to go back to that. My goal for 1 week, was just get back to my routine, get some kind of routine. And I do it for a week, and I found it really hard to keep going. So it became a really steep uphill battle. And then feeling that I could find my own way forward felt even more difficult and even more further away, because I was struggling to do the things to get that job, because I was already drained and burnt out from trying to survive. And I don't want to sound ungrateful, because I'm really, really grateful that I have been able to still have time with my family, have a roof over my head, have people that care about me and supporting and cheering me on. I'm so lucky to have that. But what I will say, the environment dictates how you move. I knew realistically in myself the only way I could build the life that I wanted to live was to move out. But I was struggling to get to the place of moving out. And whether it's your living situation or another situation that is keeping you stuck, and the thing that you need to move forward is actually the thing that's keeping you there, that's a really difficult place to be. A lot of us are there in some way. Most of us, if not all of us, have definitely at some point been there. But whether it's money that's keeping you there, it's your situation, a relationship, a job, whatever it is that is keeping you there, it's keeping you stuck in a cycle. But the only way forward is to change how you react to that environment. The only way you can break out of that is to stop fighting it and to start embracing it. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it doesn't feel like it's the path forward, it feels like a deviation. Sometimes we need to deviate. If we hit a block, we don't just keep hammering down the wall because we can't get down the wall, okay? That's exhausting and the wall's not coming down. The only way is to walk around it and to find a different way. Figuring that out is the first thing. And the little more difficult, but second thing, is accepting that. We need to stop tying whatever is in front of us to what's happened in the past. The only way forward is to look at what we have right now and not grip so tightly onto everything we've done in the past, because it feels like it's for nothing. But what if I told you it's not for nothing? All the work I'd done on myself into the person I'd become was not for nothing. I just needed to figure out who I was as the evolved person, but in this environment. And once I figured that out and I spent the time, I was able to figure out a way forward. And what it also did is it forced me to come back to myself. When we're in those moments of feeling stuck and we don't know the way forward, the first thing that gets us to go forward is to come back to ourselves and to figure out that we're stuck and to figure out why that is and to figure out what we need to move forward, what's draining us, what's energizing us. Even if we don't like it, we get really stubborn, but if we can choose to let it go and to do what is in our control, we can find a way round the wall rather than hammering the wall of steel down. This can be in habits. I want to use this as an example because I feel like this is something that a lot of us are very familiar with. We know gossiping is wrong. We've become really good at not gossiping. Yet somehow, sometimes, we still find ourselves in situations where we're gossiping. We repeat old behaviours. Even if we don't like those behaviours, even if we've already moved past those behaviours, we can repeat them again. We feel really guilty about that and we start beating ourselves up about that because we think that we're this bad person and we're acting badly. Even though we know it's wrong, we still do it. But the fact alone that you know it's bad behaviour and you're uncomfortable with that as it's happening immediately afterwards shows that you don't actually believe that that behaviour is good and that's why you've done it. It shows that the environment you were in made you feel, for whatever reason, that you slipped back into that behaviour and you did it again. So if there's something today or this week that you've done that your old self would have done, but who you are today is not happy with, and you did it anyway, whatever that thing is, please let it go. I want you to let it go because it's actually not a reflection of who you are. It's a reflection of the version of you that was required by that environment. When we're gossiping again, when I've gossiped again, when I am such a big advocate for not gossiping, it's been in situations where I wanted to socially fit in. I wanted to join in with the conversation. I couldn't change the whole conversation, or my mind didn't immediately go to, I can change the conversation, I can call this out and change it, because I was new in that place. I was new with those people. So that wasn't going to get me brownie points. I was definitely listening to it. And then maybe I did slip in to asking a question or doing something that contributed to it, not feeling proud of that. And a lot of us that gossip aren't necessarily doing it because we believe it's right and we're proud of that. But it's because we slip into that behaviour because we're getting social reward from the people around us that are also gossiping. But the chances are that none of those people actually want to be gossiping and feel good about gossiping. It may feel like brownie points in the moment, but ultimately we're going to feel worse about it afterwards. Sometimes it just takes one person to go, hold on. We can all collectively agree and move on with a conversation. That can feel hard to do. But if that's your values and that's who you are, notice these things and feel that you can take that action. And if people don't reward you socially for that, great. They're not your people. Don't make them feel bad about it. The fact that it's being called out and that they participated in it, they're going to feel actively bad about it. But just go, maybe we should just move the conversation on and leave it behind. That's it. Don't bring awareness to it. Don't bring it back up. If you don't like how other people are acting, give them a little bit more grace because they might actually not be feeling like they're proud of their behaviour or they like how they acted, but they felt themselves slipping into that behaviour because of the environment. Being comfortable actually keeps us in the same place. A lot of us, I'm sure, are very familiar with the idea of comfort zones. For those of you that don't know, I'm just going to quickly recap. Think of it as concentric circles. In the middle, we have our comfort zone. This is everything we do, which we don't have to think twice about. We don't feel challenged in at all. Then we have our stretch zone, which is places where we're increasing our comfort zone, but it doesn't necessarily incite panic, which would be our third concentric circle. We don't need to panic ourselves to move forward. I want to tell you a little story. This is one of my favourite stories to tell, and it's because this was massively out of my comfort zone. I love this story, oh my god. I want to tell you the story of my first solo trip. This was one of the most life-changing experiences I have ever had. Since I went on this trip, anyone that knows me knows, I have always been the biggest advocate for going on a solo trip, and I actually kind of want to thank a friend who inspired me to take this solo trip in the first place. I was in first year university and I had this friend who was telling me about her solo trip and how she went on this free walking tour and she met all these people, all these strangers. She ended up going to the bar with them that night and she just had the best time ever. And I just felt the energy of her experience when she was telling that. It just made me feel this need to go on a solo trip. Bear in mind, I was 19. I was still really young. It was actually a trip I wasn't planning on going to alone, but the situation changed and this trip was no longer happening. But I decided I really wanted to go, so I was going to go there anyway. I was so excited. I was giddy. I literally had butterflies in my stomach at the thought of this trip. But I was also incredibly nervous because as fun as fantasizing about going and exploring a place as a 19-year-old in my own world, in a new country away from everyone I knew, how exciting that was. When it came to booking the flights, that's where I first felt some resistance. I had this sinking feeling. I was like, oh my God. I couldn't press the button to book the flights because it felt real. I knew that as soon as I booked the flights, that was it, I was going. And it was definitely out of my comfort zone. Not in my panic zone, but it was pretty far out in my stretch zone. I decided, okay, this trip sounded amazing for my friend. I'm going to go on this trip, a different place, because I really want to go there. This trip was to Venice and I really wanted to go to the Architecture Biennale. And I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to go on this trip, I'm going to do it in a way that I feel like I can still do it. A hostel for me at that point, with lots of people I didn't know, was way too scary. So I found a really cheap hotel room and I knew that I was going to be out most of the days, so that was fine. I booked it. I booked the flights and I was so excited for this trip. But I booked it with the feeling that if I spent the whole time in my hotel room and at this festival, and that was the whole trip, that was the trip successful. That was the baseline. That was a success in itself. I took the pressure off in being able to find a way that was going to work for me. It gets to going on this trip, and I am incredibly excited, incredibly nervous. I have one of those free walking tours booked. But I also know if I don't meet people and that'll be fine. At least I'm just going and doing it. I decided before I went that this trip was going to be about trying new things, about saying yes to things, about doing things that scared me, about doing things I wouldn't normally do, and just having new experiences in a place that I could leave behind completely afterwards. It wouldn't matter because everyone I met I wouldn't have to ever see again. I could go back to my life. No one could ever know what happened. So if I messed up, it was okay. And that was really freeing as well. When we have the pressure of new experiences in a place where people do know us, that can be way more difficult because there's the lingering feeling of being judged. Even if we shouldn't be giving that judgment anyway, it completely removed that. It made it an exciting adventure. The whole thing was an adventure. I got there and got to my hotel room. As soon as I got there, I knew God was on my side. Because I had the smallest, most cheapest room in the whole hotel. I got upgraded for free to the junior suite. It was just a sign to me that I was meant to go on this trip and this extra space would give me extra comfort, and if I wanted to spend even more time in my room, it just set the vibes off so right because it's lucky. I felt so lucky. I felt lucky to be able to go on this trip anyway. So I got there and the first night I decided, because I got there pretty late, I was just going to go to sleep. And then the first day I was going to go to the festival, come back to the room. When it actually came to leaving the hotel room the next day, I had such bad anxiety. I was literally so scared to step out of the room and just explore. But again, I reminded myself, all I have to do is get to the festival. I'll stay there. By then, I have that safety and I can come straight back here. This is my base point. So I went to the festival and I just had the best day ever. I was so absorbed in what I was looking at. It felt like home because it was genuinely just because I loved architecture and I learned so much. Anyway, I had the best time, the best day. I was on such a high that day. I felt like it was a success and I already felt the rewards of having been on the trip. So I was so happy that if I just came here every day, I learned so much and just got to enjoy it. This was way more than worth it. So I went back to my room and because I had a positive experience, it gave me the confidence to go out for dinner. So I went out, I took myself for a solo dinner and I had the best time. I didn't care that I was there by myself, that I asked for a table for one. I didn't care. I wasn't being judged. No one cared. I was just there. I was able to enjoy Venice. I was able to enjoy the place and just my own company and reflect on what I'd seen that day. I didn't go on my phone. I just had the best time. This American couple actually ended up speaking to me, and we were just having this really lovely chat. Just being so present and so grateful and just radiating this glowing, golden, positive energy, because I was just stretching and I was getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, and that put me in this amazing feeling. When you can get comfortable with being uncomfortable, you're unstoppable. I felt unstoppable. I had never felt like that before. Things that were scaring me started to not feel scary anymore. I was speaking to this couple and they kind of made a joke. They were like, "You would be really great as a politician." And I was like, "No, I would never do politics." But I think what they meant by that was they thought that I had this good perspective and I seemed grounded and I just had this good energy. And obviously I had this good energy. I was on such a high. I was radiating to everyone I could possibly meet. I had the best night. I went back to the hotel room and the next day I had the walking tour. So because I'd had these two such positive experiences and I was on this high already, I was going into this walking tour with the mindset of, okay, I'm just going. If I meet people, I meet them. If I don't, I don't. On the walking tour. And I could kind of see some people were there in couples, some people were there by themselves. As I'm going on this walking tour, I was getting sick to my stomach at the thought of saying hi to someone that I could tell was by themselves. So I kind of didn't for the first hour. But 1 hour went in and I was like, "Naomi, we're not doing this. We came on this trip to do things that scare us. And we said, just say hi. What's the worst that's going to happen? I'm not going to see them after this hour." So I went to say hi, and it was the best decision I made, because from saying hi, I actually started speaking to this girl and we were talking a little bit, and I was like, even if I've just met this one girl, that's great. And then another girl very quickly sees that we've got chatting and she joins us. So there's now 3 of us just chatting, and we're all solo travelers. We've all just met, and at the end of the tour, we were saying, oh, maybe we should spend the day together. I had plans to go back to the festival, so I was like, I'm going to go back, but let's get drinks later, let's get dinner later together. And that's what we did. That's what we did, because I let go the pressure of it having to happen, but I also let go of the judgment and just being able to say yes and try, even if it was scary, especially because it was scary, but because I'd promised myself this trip was about doing things that scared me and were uncomfortable. I was opening the door for possibility, to meeting lots of people, to having these experiences. If I would have just stayed and not said anything, that wouldn't have happened. We decided they were going to spend the day together and I would meet them later. Getting to the festival was scary yesterday. When I got to the festival that day, I felt this sense of relief. I felt this sense of safety. I'd already stretched my comfort zone that the festival was the safe place. And then as I saw them again later, they were safe again. And we were exploring and we were chatting and we got this pasta to go thing, whatever. And we were sitting and we were chatting by the Rialto Bridge, and I hear this British voice and I'm like, hold on a second. We turned to the guy that's sitting next to us. I said, "Hey, are you from the UK?" He was like, yeah. I could hear from his voice he was from a similar place to me. So we established that we're from neighbouring towns, which was so funny. Turning and talking to him became so easy. That morning, I struggled to even say hi to the people on my walking tour. A few hours later, suddenly I could just turn to the guy next to me and be like, "Oh yeah," even though he wasn't on a walking tour, he had no reason to talk to me. As the trip progressed, I did more things that scared me even more, things I would never imagine myself doing. And I did because I decided, you know what? I never have to be here again. No one's going to remember this. None of this exists. None of this is real. So I'm going to do it. When I got home from this trip and I was reflecting, it was so clear to me so quickly the effect this trip had had on me. I set out with the intention of, I can live in my hotel room and I just have to go to the festival and that's it. And that would be trip success. And that was scaring me right at the start. I left and I didn't want to leave because I was having the most amazing time, trying new things, doing new things. The trip was life-changing for me. I got so comfortable being uncomfortable that when I got home, there was a shift. The things that were usual for me at home were no longer things that were satisfying enough for me. I was seeking out things that were uncomfortable because the feeling got so addictive. There was a basis level of what the trip would be to be successful. The trip was so much more than that. I basically created my own place within Venice. In those 5 days that I was there, I met strangers. I had so many conversations with strangers. I'd explored, made my own memories in that place. And no one could take that away from me. No one at home knew what happened to me. And everything I was doing was on my terms and on my timing. And I say it's the best thing I've ever done because from who I was before the trip, booking those flights, to who I was afterwards, it was a whole mindset reprogram. And that meant that after that trip, I was able to grow so much more as a person because I was able to function in a way of being excited by life and being excited by things that made me uncomfortable. So the point of this story isn't just how great the story was and how amazing the transformation was, but it's the point being that you can't evolve in a life that rewards who you used to be. You can't evolve in environments that keep you there. I needed a whole new place, a whole new environment in order to try new things. But when I experienced that, I was able to approach everything after that with such a different attitude. It meant that from there, I actually grew so much more and so much more quickly. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like you don't know the way forward, and you're realizing that you're spending so much time in your comfort zone and you're not doing the things that necessarily scare you, let this story be the trigger for you to go and seek discomfort, to go and seek what the possibilities of life are waiting for you. I know a lot of us know this already, but this is your reminder. This is active proof that your environment is keeping you there. Sometimes we just outgrow those places. They've served their purpose and they're not meant to be there forever. And we need to let them go so that we can evolve, because that's where the growth happens. That's where we build the life we want, fall in love with life again. Where we become so present, relieve so much pressure of the future that we envision. When we can let it go and not know what's around the corner, but that be something that's really exciting, we open the door for possibility of things to change tomorrow. So my challenge for you today is to do something that makes you feel uncomfortable. Nothing dangerous. Whether it's just going up to a stranger and giving them a compliment, that can be really scary. But no matter how big or small it is, whatever's relative for you, do something that stretches you. Choose to do something you wouldn't normally do. And then observe how that makes you feel after you've done it. Let that guide you in how you move forward. I also needed this as a reminder for myself because I've been very comfortable recently and I think I actively need to seek more discomfort. So let's change things up. We can unlock the possibility to evolve beyond where we've evolved so far. That concludes this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please, as always, let me know what you think. Leave a comment on Spotify, send me a DM on Instagram at Yalara Collective. I get back to every single one of you. Leave a review. It really helps the show out, but it also lets me know what you think. If there's a topic you want me to cover, please let me know because I want you to be as part of this conversation. This is as much yours as it is mine. We're in this together. As always, I'll leave the Instagram in the show notes to keep up with podcast updates. And I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode.